Hey guys, welcome to Hallowed Groundling. I'm really excited to be here with you tonight. It's the first one in a very long time, and here we are in COVID world. But this is a fun video version that we want to do. This is hopefully the first of many, actually. And tonight I'm with a very special guest, and I'm really excited to have her with me. We're going to be talking about vampire movies tonight. So, and a few of our favorite actors that have portrayed vampires. So, without further ado, I will let the lovely Danielle Galerta into the room, who is also the amazing Penny Dreadful. And here she is. Let's let her in.
Hey. Hey.
Hey.
Hi.
Are you in?
Going?
I'm good. How are you?
Just as we were starting. Sorry.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Can you see my audio video? Oh, wait.
I can't, but I will see. I'm sure when you. It looks like your video. Yeah, there you are.
Hi.
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 How's it going?
Good. How you doing?
Good. Good. Welcome to the first Zoom podcast. This is pretty fun.
Woo. And I messed it up right away. Like,
no, you did not. You don't mess anything up ever. You are the best. You are the absolute best. So I gave you a little introduction before you came into the room. You've been on before, so everybody knows who you are anyway. So hopefully if they're watching, they know who you are anyway.
Are we live streaming?
No, we're just recording. Yeah, we're just recording a Zoom meeting. So it's basically just going to record us and that's it. So no big deal. And you look so pretty. What were you so afraid of? You look beautiful.
That's because I cast a spell. And I don't, but thank you. It's all, held up by,
pulleys and mechanisms. Yep. I know.
Marionette. I was like all day today. I was like, since the quarantine stuff and working from home and now being home off for the summer, it's like, oh, I only have to not do anything. I don't have to get dressed.
I'm sorry. I mean, we don't have to. We can just do audio actually.
So I took a shower and everything. I worked out on the elliptical, so I was all kind of like sweaty.
Gross. Yeah. I know. I was out all day shopping. It was disgusting out. So
yeah, it's so it's like muggy and
I know it's terrible. Okay, so let's do it. Let's get into it. Let's talk about it. Because we don't want to make sure you can get off to go to bed early to get Crispy to the vet.
It's just a checkup.
Yeah.
We're going to do an hour and a half discussion on Count Chocula.
Count Chocula. All about Count Chocula. That's all. I think we already talked about him, didn't we, in the pop culture? We had a big cereal discussion.
Actually, we did, yes.
We did. We had a lot of fun talking
about the monster cereals. Frankenberry stool.
Yep, Frankenberry stool. Ew. So this fascinating fact I found out is that vampires are the most covered character, real or imaginary.
No kidding.
In movies. Yeah.
Wow.
Vampires are the most covered, which when you think about it kind of makes sense. Like when I thought back, I'm like, there are so many. I think it was in all of media too, because of course now there's television shows, there's like True Blood and all these other things. So it's like, but when you think it's crazy. The only thing that comes close is Tarzan.
No kidding, really?
Yeah.
And you don't see too many Tarzan movies these days, once in a while. But
yeah, they're like
interesting. Wow.
I know, isn't that cool? I mean, because when you think of, there are so many. Because when I started doing research and thinking of what we were going to talk about, I was like, there are so many. Like I started looking, I'm like, we could go on and on. This could go on forever because there are so many films, and so many different actors have played vampires. But I think Dracula is going to be
definitely. That's why I wore I put on Facebook, but I wore my Team Van Helsing.
Yes. You're gonna get hurt though. I mean, we're talking about Dracula. You don't want to talk about Van Helsing.
I know, but I have to myself.
All right, so I thought first we would go right to the start and we would talk about Nosferatu, 1922 Nosferatu.
Cool. Yeah.
And of course, directed by F.W. Murnau and written by Henrik Galeen, who is, of course, adapted it from Bram Stoker's Dracula. And of course, the fabulous Max Schreck plays Count Orlok.
Mhm.
Um, there's so much to say about Max
Yeah.
Schreck, don't you think? He's
Oh
just,
yes, yeah, yeah. I mean,
yeah. I mean, he
definitely
always, yeah.
perfect casting.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Definitely. What was that movie? Was it Shadow of the
Yeah, I
Vampire?
actually wrote that down in my notes. I was like, I'm gonna talk about Shadow of the Vampire
Yeah, I'm
too.
like, wow, could that be? Could they have found some notes that is this based on a tree? Because he was so disturbingly creepy in
He
that
was,
role. He was
yeah,
such like
so
a
odd.
corpse.
Yeah, he was unbelievable. And so the couple of the cool things I found out were that most of the interiors are still there, and it was filmed in Wismar and Lübeck in Germany,
Hmm.
and most of the the exteriors of the buildings, they're all still there.
That's
So
cool.
they didn't get the wars or anything like that. They weren't gone, which is pretty
Field trip.
crazy. I
Glad,
know, I
glad
know.
to
I
know.
was like, that'll be really exciting. It was banned in Sweden because it was too horrific, and they finally let it come through in the 70s, apparently, the swinging 70s in Sweden.
Wow, took
Yeah,
that long.
I
Wow.
know, I know. And all the prints were destroyed by Bram Stoker's widow because she hated it for obvious reasons. Um, and this other thing I found really interesting, and I'll have to, when I watch it again, I'm not surprised by this, but he only blinks once in the whole movie.
Really, I did not know that.
At the end of Act One, he blinks.
Really,
Yeah,
wow,
I know. It.
that's disturbing.
I have to say, I watched it years ago at the Whaling Museum. I saw
Oh,
it with,
interesting that they
yeah,
placed it there.
with a they had a band play with it, like
Oh,
an
cool.
orchestra, small orchestra play with it, and it was really beautiful. And it was up on one of the main walls where the ship is and everything. So it was really cool to see it like that.
Yeah.
I haven't watched it in a while. I have to sit and watch it again because I'm intrigued now with the blinking thing. But I remember seeing that when I was very young, and he really disturbed me. I remember feeling
Yeah.
very disturbed. So when I saw Shadow of the Vampire, I kind of bought it. I was like, I could buy this. I could buy that he was a real
Yeah.
vampire because he
It-
was just so eerie and creepy.
Definitely. But it's great that the real monster of that movie was F.W. Murnau. John
Absolutely.
Malkovich.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
know. What did you like? When did you first see it? When?
Oh gosh, geez, I want to say probably might have been when I was in high school. Maybe
Mhm.
it might have been. I don't know if it was on PBS around Halloween or because sometimes they play silent films on PBS around
Yeah.
Halloween. Might have been around then. Um, and I had the same reaction, just really a very eerie portrayal of Count Orlok of Nosferatu, but obviously it's Dracula. I mean, it's the story, the Dracula story, and so when Bram Stoker's widow won that lawsuit, like all of the copies were supposed to have been destroyed. So it's a miracle that it survived, like that we
Yeah.
still have it today, because it could have gone down like London After Midnight, where
Mhm.
we just have stills and
I
no actual
know.
footage of it. So it's
That's such
kind
a
of awesome.
that makes me sad about that because that film looks amazing. I mean, it just
Yeah.
every shot I've ever seen of it looks so
You
beautiful.
it's, I mean, you always hear these rumors, and one of the, people who perpetuated the rumors, Fari Ackerman from Famous Monsters of Filmland, Fari used to say, and I actually saw him give a presentation on London After Midnight, and he's claimed that he had heard there's a collector in England who has it and won't share it. He's waiting for something. I forgot what the reason for, so he can make money off it or something. I don't know
Yeah,
what, because I think
yeah,
it's would have probably fallen into the public domain by now. I don't know, but so I it's probably just a myth. But
yeah, yeah.
that dream that could still exist, because Fari Ackerman saw that movie in the theater when it
Mm,
played. Like he
oh my
watched
God.
it in the theater, so he was like one of he passed away, but he was one of the few people who could describe vividly what the film was like and
Yeah,
that. So yeah,
I know
but
that's
Nosferatu,
incredibly
yeah,
it's incredibly sad that that's not
I
here.
know, I know.
Yeah, there was a apparently after the prints of Nosferatu were destroyed, they found, I guess it was like a second set that hadn't been destroyed. That's what we have now. That's actually what they've remade mastered and made
Oh,
into this
okay.
one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hence why it's in the public domain and hence why
Yeah.
it's,
We
what it is now. Yeah.
I showed that in when we did the silent film season of Shilling Shockers,
Mm.
and we did that one. We showed Nosferatu, and we went to in Salem. My friend James Largio owns Count Orlok's Nightmare Gallery, so it's themed that it's like a horror museum of statues, and it's really cool.
Such a
Like he
cool
named it
place.
after, yeah, yeah. I love that he named
Yeah.
it after Count Orlok. So I was
Me
like, oh,
too.
for that
Yeah.
episode, we should go to Count Orlok's Nightmare Gallery and do a whole.
Ab- oh my God. I would love to. I loved that place. I could have stayed there forever. Oh my God. When we went there with Mary, I could have stayed there forever. I
Yes.
was
Oh,
like,
yeah, that's right. We went and we
yeah,
went
yeah.
to Salem. That's
That was
right.
the
Yeah.
first time I'd been, and I was like in love. I'm like, oh my
Oh,
God, I don't want to leave this place.
great. Yeah.
And he was so sweet too. The owner
Oh,
was so nice. Yeah.
well, he's wonderful. But yeah, it's such an eerie uh, film and such an interesting. Even the early special effects were still they still hold up. It's still effective. Like when he's destroyed by the sun and he's like he's holding his chest and
Yeah.
this and he's destroyed by the sun. It's still impactful. Like it's still a very effective film, and the makeup is so the rodent-like appearance of Count Orlok is so
I know.
creepy. Like you just feel like,
Between his
ugh,
teeth and his
yeah,
eyes and
yeah,
like the hands and everything and the movement and the way it was just all of it combined beautifully to just be incredibly terrifying. Like when
yeah,
I remember I thought about that a lot when I went to bed. Like
yeah,
after I went to
yeah.
bed, I would think about that character and I was
With
like
the
he just, yeah.
fingernails, yeah.
Oh, he always wigged me out. And yeah, of course you mentioned Shadow, which Shadow the Vampire is just brilliant to just kind of show you like
Willem Dafoe,
a
perfect
possible
casting.
alternate reality to what was happening when they made it. But it was, yeah, William Defoe and John Lithgow and Eddie Izzard. Eddie Izzard's in it
Malkovich.
too.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And John Malkovich was it
What
Malkovich
did
that
I
was up?
say? Did I say John Malkovich? I meant John Malkovich. If I didn't
Oh
say it, John Malkovich was Murnau, right? Yeah, and
yes,
then
yeah,
yeah, and William Defoe was Max Schreck.
yeah,
Yeah,
mm,
yeah, so good.
yeah.
It's so good. And then also I want to mention too the Werner Herzog version from the '70s with Klaus
I've never
Kinski.
seen it.
Have you
The
never
Klaus
seen it?
Kinski version.
The
I've
Klaus
never
Kinski?
seen the '70s Klaus. No, I haven't.
Oh,
How
it's
is it?
it's excellent. It's
Yeah,
excellent. I mean, I love Werner Herzog, so it's like his
yeah,
stuff is amazing, and Klaus is was just he's got that same kind of, he was so method and he got completely into it. He was quiet and he didn't talk to anybody for whatever amount of time it took to film it, and he was so creepy. It's one of those movies that I remember I was watching it in my old apartment in Providence. It was the first time I saw it. And I was sitting there watching it, and I had a friend who was staying with me, my friend Paris, who lives in Hawaii now. And she was out with some friends. And I was watching it on the couch, and I was so into it and so freaked out. She came in and I screamed. I like literally,
ah,
she came in, she scared me because she came in out of nowhere and I screamed and I'm like, what are you doing? I was like, hello. And she's like, what's the matter with you? I'm like, oh my God, I'm watching this movie and I'm totally, totally into it. It just scared the crap out of me. So yeah, it has really great atmosphere. It's very creepy. It's very quiet. So it's got a lot of the same type of tropes that the Nosferatu, the original one does. So, and Klaus Kinski is just creepy.
oh,
Anyway, yeah.
yeah.
he was a creepy dude
Oh,
anyway.
yes, yeah, yeah, definitely. And that vampire, that type of vampire, is probably closer to sort of the folklore vampires, the vampires of folklore than, something like a Lugosi or Christopher Lee, whereas suave, in a tuxedo kind of vampire, like the Count Orlok, rodent-like
More
corpse
rat-like.
cadaver, yeah, is probably closer to the folklore,
Like Peter from What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, pizza.
Oh, Peter. I'll give you a broom so you can clean up these torsos. Okay, so I thought we'd go on. So next we're going to talk about Dracula in 1931 with Bela and directed by Todd Browning. There were 9 writers on the 1931 Dracula.
Wow.
9 that
Wow.
were, of course, they were adapting it from the play,
Yeah.
which Bella was in as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, it was crazy. I was like, when I saw it, I'm like, there were 9 writers on it. I was like, it's not that complicated. I was like, I don't understand
Yeah.
why there are 9 writers. But I guess getting it to the screen, to the way they did it with the play, was, you know, was a little bit of a difficult task, I suppose. Um, so I have a few small things. So Dracula, the Dracula Castle was a painting. I didn't know that. It was
Oh,
actually on
like
a
a matte
glass.
painting. Yeah.
Yeah, it was on glass. And so when you see like the carriage and everything, all that is real, but the background is totally fake. It's
Mm.
all a painting in the background. Um, so apparently another thing was that Bella was really excited to do the movie because he wanted to repeat the success that he had with the play. And they he made a really bad deal for himself. Like I guess they only paid him like $500 a week, which was
Oh,
pretty paltry compared to what other people were making on the
yeah.
film. A couple of other people in it, I think Dwight Fry was making like I think like 1,500, but he didn't see a lot of it because he belonged to another studio. It was when they lent out actors when actors like belonged to a studio. So yeah, I felt really bad for him. I was like, oh my god, he was like iconic and he played this role so many times and
Poor Bella.
like, yeah, I know, poor Bella. He just
Yeah.
got the short end of the
Really
stick.
did over and over and over again.
Yeah. So like when was the first time you saw the 1931 Dracula
Oh
with Bella?
gosh. Yeah, that was I was pretty young when I saw that.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've told the story before. My uncle Valdemar, my uncle Valdemar was a big monster kid in the '60s when he moved to the U.S. from Portugal. He was a kid. I think he was 9 or 10 when he moved here,
Yeah.
and so he got immersed in monster culture in the '60s. He got here in '67, and like I know he was getting famous monsters and going to the Capitol Theater on Acushnet Ave, where we live in New Bedford, when the
Yeah.
Capitol Theater was there, and watching horror movies there. And so when I was a kid, he kind of got me into all of that stuff. So he was the first person I ever knew who had a VCR in the 80s. Like, I don't know, must have been like, I don't even remember, like 81, 82, whenever like VCRs first became available to
Yeah.
um, the public. And I remember it was expensive to get them at that time, but he got a VCR and he got copies of horror movies, of classic horror movies. And the first time I watched that was with my uncle Val, and I must have been, geez, maybe 9, 10, something like
Yeah.
that. Like about the age he was when he came to America. That was
Yeah.
the age I was when I saw all of those movies, and oh my God, I was captivated by all
Yeah.
of those movies. But Dracula was, there's such a wonderful ethereal quality about Dracula, and a lot of people knock it for being very stage bound because it is adapted from the Hamilton Dean play. So it is stagey in a lot of ways, like filming a play in some ways, but Lugosi was so the gravitas that he had in that role, and just the
Yeah.
strangeness. Like there was a different kind of strangeness than Max Schreck. This was just something supernatural
Mm-hmm.
quality about him that I really liked. And the other, like Dwight mentioned, Dwight Fry was amazing, like so
Yeah.
so good as Renfield, and
So scary.
oh, totally, yeah, just yeah, oh yeah, and I just the sets were beautiful, the castle
Yeah.
sets, and there's the mist and just the sort of
Mm-hmm.
gothic horror of the whole thing. It's just I loved it. I loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it's really a film that embraces silence. There's so
yeah,
much silence in it, and it's
yeah,
so perfectly placed. It's
yeah.
completely, and films don't always do that. They fill it with music or they fill it with, whatever they have to do. But that movie is so quiet and
Yeah.
it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. I mean, I still, I put it on every Halloween. I usually put it on while I'm giving candy to the kids.
Mhm.
I put on that, or I'll put on Creature from the Black Lagoon. Those are usually the two that I put on back to back. And that one is just, it's so quiet and it's so scary. And I mean, I think that, he has, like you said, this gravitas. He has this beautiful way that he plays him with such, he's just so deliberate. So, he like completely methodically has planned out that character, and he knows exactly who he is. Like
Yes.
when you watch him, you're like, he's not playing, he is Dracula. He
Yeah,
is,
totally.
yeah,
Yes, yes,
yeah.
yeah.
It's that perfect marriage. I mean, I think him and I'm sorry, Bella, but I'm mentioning Boris, but Boris Karloff had that same kind
He,
of.
he
He
did
was.
not hate Boris
I
Karloff.
know, I know.
Yeah,
I had to do the. I just watched Ed Wood. I had to do the
yeah,
joke,
yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
Boris had that same kind of, you know, beautiful, deliberate way that he acted in that, that same kind of
Yes.
amazing
Oh,
style
yeah,
of just,
totally.
I mean, we're missing that now. There are not many actors that do that same kind of thing. I mean, there are fabulous actors, but we're missing that same kind of, I think, putting on a role and being known for a role. I think, the closest, I'm sure there's other people, but off the top of my head, the only person I can think of is like Anthony Hopkins putting on Dr. Lecter, like a
Right.
very, like he is now. When you look at him, you think of that because, and it's so scary and it's so, he just like, they put so much into those roles. And
Mhm.
I mean, Bello he's unbelievable,
Oh, totally, totally.
Yeah.
And they did they filmed the Spanish version at the same time on the set
Yeah.
of the American version. And a lot of people feel that the Spanish version is better, Spanish language version. And in many ways it is, like in terms of how it's filmed,
Yeah.
the direction of the film is better. But definitely not the guy who played Dracula. I forget his name off the top of my head. The actor who played Dracula
In
doesn't even
the, in
touch
this,
Lugosi.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
In the Spanish version.
not even close. No, yeah,
Yeah.
not even close to
Yeah.
Lugosi. And I watched I don't know if you've ever seen when they did the version. They took the original Dracula. Philip Glass did a score for it, and it's cool. But I find that it's like you said, the silence in that movie makes it more effective. Like I think
Yeah.
adding the music to it didn't work as well. I
Mm-hmm.
think those eerie silences and then the wolves howling and just like and
Oh yeah.
it just I thought that had more of an impact and stays with you more. I
Oh
think.
yeah. Because
Yeah.
you're waiting for something to happen. There's no music to fill. There's nothing to tell you what to feel. Because music tells you what to feel in a horror movie, and when it's there, and there's nothing. There's just such
Yeah.
silence, and I think like I mean the scene that always sticks with me from when I saw it. I mean, I think I was around your age. I think I was around like 9 or 10 the first time I saw it on TV. It was on television, and I was completely mesmerized when I saw it. And the thing that got me was Renfield. Like, what do I like? I loved Bella. Like, but I wasn't afraid of Bella. It was more like I was intrigued. You're intrigued because you want to keep
Yeah.
watching him. But Renfield scared the crap out of me,
Yeah.
and especially that first on the boat when they look down the staircase and he's at the
Oh, and he's
bottom
like,
in the light and he's like,
yeah,
and I'm like,
yeah. That
like,
laugh was
oh,
so good.
oh, every time I went, I'm like, oh. I mean, Dwight Fry was just terrifying, and when he's in the asylum eating the bugs, and it just,
Oh yeah.
oh God, he's another one who completely put that role on where, yeah, it was very
I
beautiful.
love him. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that movie.
Yeah, and I really like. I mean, I liked all of the actors. Like I liked obviously. Edward Van Sloan was a great Van Helsing,
Oh
but
yeah,
me, Peter Cushing is like
the
he's Van
King.
Helsing. But yeah, I love Edward Van Sloan. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah,
it's just Peter Cushing like kind of defined that role.
yeah. Apparently, so another little fun fact, Bella's cape, his one of his original capes, it's actually got put up for auction, but nobody bought. His son wanted to sell it for like $1.2 million, and
Oh
nobody bought it.
yeah.
Amazingly enough, it's a little much,
Yeah.
but apparently it got donated to the Motion Picture Association, so
Oh
it's going to
great.
be restored and it'll be put on display in
Oh,
um, one of the museums. So that should be fun.
that's
I'd love
cool.
to see that. I know. But yeah, the cape he was buried in was not one of his Dracula capes, apparently. But he was buried in a cape, which I do love. And of course, we love our fun story about Vincent Price and Peter Cushing wanting to
Yes.
stake him, which I thought
Yes.
was Fun.
I don't care if it's an urban legend. I want it to be
I, it's true to us. You and I have
true to
put,
us.
yeah, it's our urban legend that we believe in completely.
Yes.
Is
Yeah.
yeah, it's the babysitter. It's all the, it's that one's ours.
Yeah.
That one's. I'm like, no, that's true. I don't. They're all dead now. I mean,
Yeah.
so
It could have happened.
it could have happened. It's fun.
There's no one
Um,
to corroborate it or to deny
yes,
it.
I love that story. All right, so let's move on to Christopher Lee and talk about
Yes.
Hammer a
Oh
little
God.
bit. I
Yeah.
know, I know. So the one specifically that I was going to talk about was The Horror of Dracula, which was the first one he did in 1958. It was directed by Terrence Fisher, and Jimmy Sangster wrote it. Yeah, oh God. Like, so my mind, when I think of, I brought this one up, but I was like, the one I think of is The Brides of Dracula, because that was actually the very first Dracula movie I ever saw.
No kidding.
I was,
Really.
yeah, I was probably about 7 or 8
Yeah.
years old. I was very young.
That's awesome.
And it was one of those things on TV. And
Yeah.
I remember him. So I was petrified. I think it was on like the movie loft, or it was on one of those.
You laughed with Dana.
Yeah, I know. It was on one of those, like, after, it was in the afternoon. It was on in like, like on a Saturday afternoon. And I was watching TV as a kid, and I happened to see it. And I remember just the images. They kind of stuck with me. Like, that's what I remember, being completely petrified. So he was the very first Dracula that I ever
The
remember.
Brides of Dracula though was that was with Cushing was Van Helsing. Wasn't that the vampire that was chained to the
Yeah.
with the jackal? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
And Van Helsing. I remember he grabs the windmill like the to
Yep.
oh he's so badass in that movie. He got bitten. It was Peter Cushing, and he pours the holy water on the
Yep.
vampire bite to cauterize it with holy water. Well, at first he burned it, and then he poured the holy water on it.
Yep.
And then when he's fighting the vampire at the end, he grabs the windmill and makes the cross, to
Yep.
yeah, until the sun comes. Oh yeah, that was so good.
So good.
Love
So
that.
good. I mean, so like we could probably do an entire podcast about Christopher Lee, like our love of Christopher Lee. And you and I know I've shared very, very
Yes.
much how much we both love him to pieces. He's
So many of
unbelievable.
those movies.
He's just delightful. He's absolutely delightful. This is a fun Christopher Lee story that doesn't have anything to do with Dracula. I don't know if you got to see any of, I think I've talked to you about the Josh Gad rewind, the reunited apart, sorry, his
Yeah.
show that he did. And he did Goonies, he did Splash, he did Lord of the Rings,
Mhm.
he did Ferris Bueller, and he reunited the cast on Zoom and talked to them. And they did uh, Lord of the Rings, and and of course, because Christopher's gone, they were telling stories about him and talking about working with him and everything like that. And um, Dominic Monaghan does a really funny impression of Christopher Lee, because there's this wonderful outtake where he and Ian McKellen are like, in Saruman's thing, and they're just like sitting there across from each other, and this is before he knows he's bad and everything, and he's going up the stairs in that white robe. And so Dominic Monaghan goes, I want to imitate Christopher when he yelled at Peter. And everybody started laughing. And I'm like, I've never heard this before. And he literally turns around, and Dominic Monaghan goes, Peter, I'm tripping on the goddamn cape again. Like, they cut to it. And he's like, Saruman is here. And he's like walking up the stairs, goes, Peter, I am tripping on the goddamn cape again. And it's like the funniest thing, because he like completely broke character to yell
Yeah.
at Peter Jackson about the cape. And it was
And it's so easy to imagine Christopher Lee doing that too.
Oh, yeah.
How intimidating that probably was.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure they were terrified, because he's like, he was amazing, and it's just this funny, and everybody's cracking up when they came back to them on the Zoom, because apparently it was like a big story around the set. They all laughed about it and thought it was very funny that he yelled at him about the cape. But
That's awesome.
yeah, and I mean, I'd have to say, I mean, we could talk about all the but he's just one of the most amazing actors that we ever had,
Oh yeah.
hands down.
Totally.
He was brilliant. He was absolutely brilliant. And his Dracula, I mean, it's so different from what Bela did. I think he's got such a different take on him.
Yes.
He's still creepy. He's still got the same kind of gravitas, but he played him completely different.
Yes.
That like that same character. I think that's what's excellent about them, and how they all stand apart. They've all played different different types of, different types of character, even playing the same character, and I love that
I
about him.
agree.
So what was the first one you saw out of all the nine Hammer films?
It was Horror of Dracula,
Mm-hmm.
and then it was also, I think we watched it at this right after that, the same, I think that same like day when it was with my uncle again. It
Yeah,
was
of
Uncle
course.
Al.
Yeah.
He loved the Hammer movies too. He still does, but he got, it was Horror of Dracula and oh God, uh, Taste. I think it was Taste the Blood of Dracula. It's
Okay.
the one with
Taste the Blood of Dracula.
the
Yeah.
baker. It's the one. I think it's the one with the baker and then the priest. There's like that's the son-in-law is an atheist, and then there's this priest, and they go after. It was eerie film. Like I
Yeah.
remember the scene in the basement of the bakery in Dracula. Um, you know, bites the girl in the basement. And it was just I think it was Taste of Blood, but
Was
I
that the
definitely.
one? That was the one with like the three guys, and they were trying to like get some like thrills, right, or something like that. I don't
No,
remember that one very
that
well.
was Scars of that was Scars of Dracula,
That was
where
Scars.
yeah, where
Okay,
he
I
goes
mixed
like he
them
goes
up.
to
See,
Dracula's. Yeah, he goes to Dracula like an idiot. Like he thinks it's going to be awesome or something. Like goes into Dracula's castle, and
always a good idea. Yeah, just
that
go
doesn't end
visit.
well. Or he goes to Dracula's castle. It does not end well for him. Let's put it that way.
No,
But
no.
Horror of Dracula was the first one I definitely
Yeah.
remember Horror of Dracula, and it's exactly what you said. It's he he still had that gravitas to him, but
Mm-hmm.
whereas like Lugosi was very aristocratic and sort of eerie in his movements and stuff. Christopher Lee, there was an aggression to him,
Yeah.
terrifying,
Yeah.
when he would, when the eyes would go red and you'd see the fangs. He was like an animal. Like he was
That's
not
one of
like,
the images from when I saw it. That close up with the and the teeth and
yeah,
that in these his
scary.
eyes.
Yeah,
Oh my God! And I remember that staying with me for a very
yeah,
long time.
yeah, like
Yeah.
an animal. Like, and he just had this cold. When he wasn't like that, he just had this cold,
Mm,
very cold,
yeah.
and still aristocratic, but a very cold
Hmm.
quality to him. But then when he like unleashed his fury, it was really intimidating to see that. Um,
Terrifying.
and, and again, I mean, Cushing was Van Helsing and that, which was a perfect counterpoint to Christopher.
Mm,
And they, of course, were a great friend. They became such good friends
I
over the
know.
years and all the films they did together and stuff. But perfect counterpoint to look
Yeah.
to Lee's
Yeah.
Dracula. Like he was the intelligent, but and knew how to deal with this threat, even though it
Yeah.
was very dangerous. But he you trusted him to sort of he could counter. And that scene at the end where they're like,
Well, you mentioned when you
curtain.
mentioned Cushing and how like freaking a badass he is. Now all I want to do is go watch all the Hammer films. I want to like watch him in. I
Yeah,
want to play. I want to watch him play Van Helsing. Shout
yeah,
out because I think he was the best. I agree. He was the best Van Helsing I think ever has been.
yeah,
I think he was
yeah.
just. Oh my God.
He's the one who, if it wasn't for Cushing, is the one I think who, because prior to Peter Cushing, Van Helsing was more like the Van Sloan, like he
Yeah.
was the intellectual, but intelligent and understood what they were dealing with. But he was more Van Helsing almost made there was like an action hero component
Yeah.
to
He was more of a
Cushing.
lover, not a fighter. But Peter Cushing was a fighter. He was more like
He
a
was the fighter.
yeah,
He was smart. He was
yeah.
just as smart as Dracula. So it was like a really good. I thought the way they did that was a really good counterpoint
Hmm.
to Lee, and then yeah, the Lee was. I mean, he did several of those Hammer
Yeah.
films and beautiful films too. Like I love Hammer
Yeah.
because I love Universal and Hammer like equally. Like I can't pick one more over the other because uh, the Universal movies had that black and white sort of ethereal quality to them, but
Yeah.
Hammer had that vivid color and very rich texture.
Yeah.
So it was just really cool to see that kind of
Hmm.
take on it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what's kind of so fun about everything like that, and like all both those both both studios. You're exactly right. That black and white, and then the contrast of the color of that. Because to me, I think when I saw that, I always thought Dracula was in black and white.
Mm.
Like I always thought it was like really old, and so when it was in color, that was really jarring to me as a kid.
Mm.
Was like he's not supposed to be in color. He's not supposed to be in my face with blood all over his face, you know. Um, yeah, it's oh my God, he's just amazing. And the funny thing is that there's not many people who could stand up with across from Christopher Lee and match him as an actor. Because he was such a strong presence.
Yeah,
He was such an amazingly strong presence, and
sure.
um, Peter Cushing's kind of one. Like it's like watching him and Ian McKellen work together. Like I mean, like it's like
Yeah.
two masters.
Mhm.
And whenever you've seen like Christopher Lee and other things where he's with other people, they're fine, but it's not he sticks out like a sore thumb because he's so intriguing and so
Right.
amazing to watch,
And a very striking look to him too.
Yeah.
Like he's tall and gaunt and just
Mm-hmm.
imposing and has a lot of presence, So
Yeah.
he was perfectly cast in that. And he didn't have many lines too, which was interesting because and in some of the films, he barely has any lines, which is
In
adds an even more frightening quality to him.
I can give you a fun fact in Horror of
Yeah.
Dracula. He has 16 lines,
Wow.
and they're
Wow.
all spoken to Harker.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. See, it's like,
16 actual word like lines. The others,
yeah,
it's all
there isn't
sounds and
much, but I
yeah,
think that
16.
adds to it, that
Mm-hmm.
makes it even more
Yeah.
disturbing, the silence.
Yeah. Bella was more of the talky, and he was more
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
middle of the road.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think we could do a whole one on Hammer too. We could do an entire.
There's so many. I still haven't seen every Hammer movie. Someday, that's on my
Yeah.
bucket list. Like watch every single Hammer movie ever. I've seen a lot of them, but not all of
Yeah.
them.
Oh, I'm so good. So, all right. So next, we're gonna talk about Paul Naschy. So we have Paul Naschy on our list with Count Dracula's Great Love from 1973, directed by Javier Aguirre and written by Alberto Insua. The story was actually by Paul Naschy. He came up with the story for it. So I saw this, and it's very cheesy. It's as wonderfully cheesy as the werewolf films. It's very so yeah. It's called so it was re-released under Cemetery Girls in the 70s. That's where where like when they re-released, I guess, in the U.S. I don't know exactly where. Yeah, it's very like. Oh, it's very like the girls, like the girl, it's all about the women coming in and, being taken over and like going out into the town and eating. It's like it's kind of sexual, it's like that very
A Paul
amped up.
Naschy movie is sexual. No.
I know, right?
Yeah, they do have that vibe to them. Yeah, it's
Yeah, they have that kind of like, hey, vibe
yeah,
to them.
yeah.
But yeah, it's fun. It's kind of cute. I like, I like the werewolf ones more. I definitely do. But I wanted to kind of see him, and he makes a good vampire. He does. He's pretty
Oh
he's pretty
yeah,
handsome. He was pretty
yeah,
handsome,
yeah.
and yeah, I liked it. I thought it was pretty fun.
That's
So like you love Paul Naschy. You've shown
yeah.
Paul Naschy films on Shilling Shockers, which is where I first saw him and really liked him. Like, what got you into? Was it Uncle Val got you into Paul Naschy too, or what? Like,
No, that was okay. So the first time I ever saw a Paul Naschy movie was on Commander USA. Commander
oh
USA showed one of the Paul Naschy werewolf movies,
yeah,
and I remember being at my grandmother's house, and I don't know why, but I was watching Commander USA show one of Paul Naschy's werewolf movies on I guess whenever that was. Commander USA was on Saturdays, I think.
yeah, I think so.
So I think it was around that time. So was it Fury of the Wolfman? It
Hmm.
was what I don't know. I just remember watching it at my grandmother's house, and I thought it was cool. I mean, I could tell
Yeah.
it was like not high budget film, but it was cool. I liked it. I thought
Yeah,
it was great as the werewolf. And then
yeah,
when we were doing Shilling Shockers, I was like, oh, we got to do some Naschy films. The first one we did was Count Dracula, and no, I mean, I'm sorry, Werewolf versus the Vampire Woman. That was the
yeah.
first one we did. He's so feral as the werewolf. And then I started digging into like some of more of the Paul Naschy movies. We did Horror Rises from the Tomb, where he plays
Hmm.
a warlock who wants to get his head reattach, and then he had been decapitated in the found guilty as a warlock and had his head cut off, and then they have to reattach his head,
Yep.
or he possesses somebody. And then we did Vengeance of the Zombies,
Hmm.
which was his zombie movie that he did, and he played Satan in that one, and he played himself, just the regular guy.
Yeah.
And his Dracula movie I have not seen. That's one of the
Yeah.
movies I haven't seen yet. I need to get
Yeah.
around to seeing that one. He did so many movies. Like
Yeah.
Paul Naschy was a big horror fan when he was a kid. He loved the Universal horror movies. He
Hmm.
grew up loving that. Like he was a hardcore monster kid. So when he became a filmmaker, like his output is pretty legendary in Spain.
Yeah.
Like he just put out so many, and he's one of the few actors who played. I mean, Lon Chaney Jr. played, I think, all the big guns as far as the monsters go, but Naschy went even beyond that. Like Naschy played Dracula in that film. He played famously the werewolf of Waldemar Daninsky. He played
Hmm.
the Mummy in a Mummy movie that he did, which I did see the Mummy movie he did, and he was quite good in that. He played, it was like a very muscular mummy, burly mummy. It was really cool. It was good. I liked that movie. And then he was Frankenstein's monster in another
Hmm.
movie. I haven't seen that one. And then he's did a Jekyll and Hyde. He was Jekyll and Hyde in one movie. Actually, it was Jekyll and Hyde. Doctor was it Doctor Jekyll meets the Wolfman? It was something like that. It was like
Yeah.
yeah. He did the. I've seen that one. He played Jekyll and Hyde. He played no. It was weird. That's what it was. He wasn't Jekyll. He was Valdemar Daninsky, and he was like looking for a cure. So he finds like Jekyll, Dr. Jekyll, and uses the formula on himself, but it turns him into Hyde. He becomes
Yeah.
Hyde. And then he was Hunchback,
Hmm.
Hunchback of the Morgue. He was Phantom of the Opera and one another movie. Like I think he played like all the monsters. And
Yeah, he just literally went down the line. Like he
yeah,
just
he's like check
I'm gonna play everybody. That's so
every
greedy.
monster.
That's so greedy. I love it. I love every
It's
second
great.
of that.
No, it's
Why would you
like
not? I mean, why would
yeah,
you not play every single one? You
and
can relate to them in
yeah.
different ways.
And while his films are definitely a little too, sometimes they're a little too sexual for me, like
Hmm.
a little bit more, and the plot lines are often not that great. You can tell that they're made with a lot of love, and I
Hmm.
love the gothic style of his
Mm.
films. Like
Yeah.
they're just dripping with atmosphere. He got that style
Yeah.
perfectly. He knew how to capture that with the candelabras and
Oh, yeah. You
and the
can see, I
tassels.
mean, I know he loved Universal, but you can definitely see his love of Hammer too. He had a very big love of Hammer because you can
Yeah,
feel that kind of coming out of it too.
yeah, it all
They're very stark colors and everything like that. And
yeah.
yeah.
I wish he had gotten more um, like later in life. He continued to make films, but I saw one of his very later films, and I was like, I think it was made in the '80s maybe or something, and
Yeah.
I felt kind of bad for him. I was like, oh, he actually is quite compelling to watch
Hmm.
on screen.
Hmm.
So I kind of wanted to see him attain some level of success in the States and do
Yeah.
stuff. And but one of his last films was called Empuso, which was a vampire film too, but it was like Greek vampires.
Mm.
Greek called the Empuso, like from Greek mythology. And I haven't
Oh,
seen that one yet, but I heard that was like one of his later films. And I remember seeing like images from it. And I'm like, oh, this looks interesting.
yeah.
I have to watch Count Dracula's Great Love. That's one of the ones that I keep, like, it's on my to-do list to get around
Yeah.
to that one.
I mean, you'll love it because you love Nashi, so you'll love it. It's good. I mean, it wasn't like I liked it, of course, because I like him, and I hadn't even heard of him
Mhm.
before I saw him on Chilling Shockers. That was the
What was
first
the
time
one
I.
you saw on Chilling Shock?
Oh, it was the first one. It was the you
Werewolf
just
versus
mentioned.
Vampire one?
Yes, the
Yeah.
Werewolf. That's the first one I watched out of all of them, which you said was the first one you did. And I loved it. I was like, this guy's great. I was like, why have I never seen this before? So I was very excited to see him,
His
and then I
werewolf
saw,
is so feral. He's so
yeah,
feral as that werewolf. Yeah.
he really is. It's so different from the Universal.
Yeah.
It's such a different take on it.
Mhm.
And it's all about, that's what they all do, like we've
Yeah.
talked about with Christopher Lee's different, Dracula as
Sure.
opposed to Bella's Dracula. They're
And I
so
love
different.
in Nash's movies when he has vampires in them, they're always like slow motion, like as
Yeah.
they're walking. Like it's just something strange, so strange.
Oh,
I love,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I actually,
Was it
so
Commander?
what,
Now that I'm thinking about it, maybe it wasn't Commander. It might have been one of those. It might have even been Creature Double Feature because I was watching it at my grandmother's house.
hmm
So maybe it was even Creature. It was either okay. It was either Creature Double Feature or Commander USA.
okay.
I have to do some research and find out which one aired of Paul Naschy movies, but
They would
it might
both
have been
work.
both. They might have both. Yeah,
They probably were on both at some point.
probably heavily edited to get rid of all the boobs, but
Yeah. Oh well.
maybe on Saturday morning, hey kids, go watch Commander USA.
Come watch the
Lots of
boobs.
nudity.
Come on, you'll love it. You'll love every second of it. The other night, so this is
Oh,
kind of a
fun.
little sidebar. Kind of a little sidebar. The other night, Bill and I watched Blackula, which
Oh, I
I
love Blackula with William
me
Marshall. Yeah.
oh me too. And I wanted to mention Blackula. I'm actually going to talk about Blackula in I'm doing another podcast by myself where I'm talking about the movie, the documentary film Horror Noir, which I think I told you about.
Yes,
And
I
so
gotta
it's
check that out.
oh, it's amazing. It's so good. And I'm going to talk about Blackula within that because they talked about that in there. But I just want to give him a shout out because we're talking about Dracula. And that movie, I hadn't seen it in a long time, and it's so good.
It
I
is
forget
good.
I forget how great it is. It's so
Yeah,
creepy. He's a fabulous vampire. I mean,
yeah,
he's a fabulous Dracula.
yeah.
Um, and the opening is so scary. And I remember seeing the opening on television too, like when I was a teenager, and loving that opening when they go to visit, Dracula, and like they want to get the slave trade ended, and then he ends up like trapping them in the house and kill.
Yeah.
He like traps the wife into the room, and he's in the coffin, and it was so. And like the female, like all the brides come out, and they're all
Yeah,
like green makeup.
yeah,
They're really like hideous,
yeah, yeah.
And I forget who. Oh God, I have his name all written down in my notes for Blackula, but like who played
William Marshall.
Dracula.
What?
No, who played
Oh,
Dracula.
Dracula. Oh.
He was fabulous. He
Yeah,
was
yeah.
so good. And when he gives the speech and he curses him, it's
Oh,
amazing. I was
yeah,
sitting down,
yeah.
we were like totally, I was like, this movie's so good. I'm like, it
It
really
is good.
is. It's such a
Yeah,
great
I mean,
film.
it's easy to sort of look at the title and go, "Oh, this is just a silly, black exploitation movie from the
Yeah.
80s,"
But
but it's
he
so
was a
savvy.
prince.
It's a
And what,
fantastic movie. Yeah,
yeah, they were talking about in horror noir how, they talk about black exploitation obviously within horror noir as well. And they were saying how, it could be this regular thing, but then they made him a prince. He's coming to end the slave trade. It's a very strong character. And
it
I
is.
mean, William Marshall couldn't play anyone that wasn't strong. He had
No,
the same kind of like Christopher Lee. He had that
yeah,
cadence, beautiful voice, handsome,
yeah,
handsome, and
yes.
like just stunning, just absolutely stunning. And I laugh out loud every time when he sits down at the table and he says, "Give me a Bloody Mary."
Yeah.
And he's just delightful. I just love him. So yeah, I had to definitely
Yeah.
mention him
I've
because
never
he's
seen the sequel,
Scream,
Scream Black.
Blackula Scream.
I have to watch that at some
Yeah,
point.
it's good. It's not as good as the first one, but it's good. It's still got the same kind of fun to it, but he's fantastic. And like when he kills the taxi driver and everything, and he's just so creepy. He's just wonderfully creepy.
Yeah.
And the poor two interior decorators who buy the castle, the first ones who die, and it's just so, oh man, what a cool movie. I love that they did that. So I had to give him a little shout out after we were talking about this. So next, we're going to get away from Dracula a little bit, but talk about one of your favorite vampires, which is Dark Shadows. So we want to talk about
Yes.
Barnabas a little bit. So Dark Shadows, like now you and I have discussed this, but I wanted to talk about it on here because I mean, I have started watching Dark Shadows and I love it. I love every second of it. I see why you're obsessed with it because it's one of those shows that's
Yeah.
amazing. It's just a really well written, fantastic serial show. So can you tell me a little bit, like, can you tell a little bit on the podcast about like what made you get into Dark Shadows? Like what it was that really, like the first time you saw it was it with Uncle Val too?
I was going to say, I'll give you three guesses. Who?
Uncle Val.
Yeah.
Well, you and I have talked about it. I'm a little, but I wanted you to kind of tell
Yeah. No, I
tell the
know you know.
story.
I know
But
you know.
I know the past. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So, or as Joan Bennett would say, the past.
the
Uh,
past. Oh my God. I have to say this, anybody who has never watched Dark Shadows, do yourself a favor, go watch it. It's amazing. It's a very well written, very fun, very cool show, and
Oh, it's awesome.
full of
It's
atmosphere, terrifying, funny, has weird funny moments in it.
yeah,
Just really cool. Just a
yeah,
great show. And you get to see a lot of really great actors flood lines and keep going. And
yeah,
it's
yes.
amazing. It's one of my favorite parts of the show,
It's
actually.
like
Where I was,
live theater, you
oh
know.
yeah, it was. It was like
Live,
watching live theater. Yeah.
yeah. Dark Shadows, my introduction to Dark Shadows was, I mean, I don't ever remember a time where I didn't know about Barnabas and Dark Shadows. And it's
Yeah.
funny, like our generation, that show was in syndication, but it wasn't everywhere. And Boston wasn't playing it when we were growing up. So none of my friends in school, like nobody really knew what it was, but I knew what it was because Uncle Val would talk about Barnabas all the time, tell me stories about Barnabas, and he gave me his famous Monsters of Filmland magazines, and one of them was the one, the Basil Gogos cover with Barnabas, painting with Barnabas when he was like has this greenish yellow face,
Yeah.
like hint of the fangs, and it was very scary to me. He gave me all his bubblegum cards, and this was like when I was really young, so I always kind of knew what Dark Shadows was because of Uncle Val. So again, when the VCR age came, one of the first things he got was he found this guy who had taped from syndication. He got like third or fourth generation copies of syndicated episodes. I think he was getting them maybe from New York or something, of Dark Shadows episodes. So Uncle Val, I went over with my mom, and he said, "Oh, I got Dark Shadows. I got a tape." And this was like he found this like long lost
The
treasure.
Holy Grail.
I'm finally gonna get to see this, and he put it
Oh,
in, and he put it in, and it was the first the episode where Willie Loomis releases Barnabas from the coffin, and
amazing.
just that episode ends with just he breaks the chains, and you hear the heartbeat, and then it's
Yeah.
just silence, and then he just like he opens the coffin, and then he
Mm.
looks into the coffin, and you just see this look come over his face, and he's like he starts like shaking, he's like "Ah," and you just see
The
this hand
hand.
slowly
Oh!
emerge with the ring, and you saw it in the painting earlier in the episode, the guy in the painting holding the cane.
Oh,
And I just that hand grabbing Willie grabbed me too by the throat because I was hooked
of course.
hardcore, and
Yeah.
I was little. I was like again, I was like maybe 9 or 10.
Yeah.
So I kept wanting to watch and watch. I tried to
Yeah.
get back. I was begged my mother to go to Uncle Val's because Uncle Val lives with my grandmother, with my grandparents. I go, can I go to Vafo's house and watch Dark
Watch Dark
Shadows?
Shadows.
And then I'd have terrible nightmares.
Of
Terrible
course, of course.
nightmares about
I have to
Barnabas.
tell you, I have to tell you the funnest little story. So I watched, so to let everybody on this know that I started watching it, and I was like talking to Dani the whole time. I'm like, oh my god, this episode happened, and oh my god, this episode happened, and we were really
Yeah.
excited.
Oh
I
yeah,
was
you were texting me.
very,
Like,
yeah, I
this,
was very
you're
excited
like,
as I was.
it's like,
Is this happening next?
Jason
I'm not
McGuire
saying anything.
is Barnabas going to kill Jason McGuire? Is Sarah Barnabas' sister?
Yeah, I was totally like asking all these questions, knowing full well that I don't want to know, but going, oh my god, oh my god, and I was so into it. And at the time, I was working on a show in school, and I was on my way home on the bus. It's an hour ride, so I would download like 3 episodes to watch the show, and I was watching all these episodes, and I'm dying to see Barnabas because I hadn't, you don't see him for a little while. It's like they kind of set up the story and set up the house and set up all the stuff, because I watched that second section, the the Barnabas right before he comes out.
Yeah.
And I remember that episode so clearly. I was sitting on the bus, and there was probably like 3 or 4 other people on with me. It was kind of late at night. It was like 10 o'clock at night, and I was watching that episode. And when that scene happened, and the hand came up, and I'm sitting there, and I out loud, and I didn't realize I said it because I was so into it. I went, yes, like. And then I realized I just said that out loud, and I look over, and there's a woman next to me, and she's like I said, I'm sorry, I'm watching something really cool. She goes, oh, it's okay. But she looked at me like, is she all right? Because I out loud was like, yes.
That's awesome.
Because I was so excited to see him, it was just a hand. I was so excited to see the hand. That's all I wanted was like something, because he hadn't come yet. And it was like kind of waiting for him to come,
Uh-huh.
they talked about him so much and I want to see him, I know what
Yeah.
he looks like, but I'm excited to see him. So yeah, I had to tell you that story because it was just the funny.
That's
I don't
awesome.
even think
That's
I
great.
told you that story. It was the most
No, I don't think
hilarious.
you did.
It
No.
was so funny. And then of
That's
course, like
awesome.
I got off the bus and I'm in downtown Providence and I'm like looking around, I'm going, this really creeped me out. It's in my head now and I'm like thinking about the show and thinking, I'm like, this is a good show. A show that sticks with you like that, where it kind
Yeah.
of gets in your skull, like you said, terrifies you, gives you nightmares. But even when you're an adult, sometimes things will get under my skin, and I'm like, yeah,
And it becomes progressively more insane as it goes on. Like the show
mm-hmm.
just because it started because the show was on for 10 months before Barnabas showed up in the
Yeah,
show, and it started out as sort of a suspenseful gothic romance. And I never even when I was a kid, I didn't know that was actually considered a soap opera because it was so different from any soap opera. Like it
mm-hmm.
was because it was like vampires and witches and ghosts and werewolves and stuff, and it was but they took that format and they sort of said it works well for that kind of
Yeah,
story on
yeah,
like a Penny Dreadful, like the Penny Dreadfuls in the 19th
yeah,
century. It was like this
yeah,
ongoing tale of the supernatural and suspense. So yeah, and then it just became more, progressively more insane as it went. And the reason it became successful was because of Jonathan Frid, because it was always very like it was really close to cancellation, and then they started the supernatural was only implied, like you weren't sure, and then maybe a couple of months into the show they started dropping more substantial, it went beyond hints. It was like,
yeah,
somebody leaves a room and like the book opens by itself and it's like woo, and then it fades out. It's like
yeah,
the book opened by itself. Let's test. They started dropping in more overt
yeah.
supernatural things, and then they did the Laura the Phoenix storyline. Like the ratings started going up the more they did it, and then they took the Phoenix from legend, and they
Yeah.
did this interesting take on the Phoenix, like
Mm-hmm.
as this like sort of manifestation as David's mother. Like it was just
Yeah.
really a disturbing storyline, and the ratings again started to go up
Yeah.
a little bit more, and then Dan Curtis was like, his kids actually was his daughters said, "Daddy, just make it really scary." And he said the scariest thing you could think of was a vampire. So
Yeah.
they auditioned the actors, and Jonathan Frid always tells this story that he was in this room of other cadavers. Like he's like, and then I out cadavered them all.
I love that he said that.
I love the way he said it. It was one of the
Yeah.
interviews. He's
Yeah.
like, I was sitting in this room with all these other cadavers, and I out cadavered them all.
I
Apparently, I don't
love
know how
it.
I feel about that. so,
Yeah.
and he did have the thing I loved about Jonathan, and this is the reason the show became hugely successful. And I think a lot of people from our generation don't realize how successful Dark Shadows was. Like, because the kids in school didn't are from our generation didn't really know about it, but Dark Shadows became like this huge
Mm-hmm.
pop culture phenomenon in the
Mm-hmm.
60s. Like uh, at that time, it was way more popular than Star Trek. Like I mean,
Yeah.
Star Trek
I
was
mean, you and I have shared this thought that we're incredibly jealous of people that grew up in the 60s because they had,
yeah,
the Addams Family and they had the Munsters and they had Dark Shadows and they had all these fabulous shows that were on
Star Trek,
television.
Batman
Batman.
66,
Yeah. I mean, you could outside of horror, you could even go to all these wonder
Lost in
Batman,
Space. Yeah,
yep, all these
yeah.
fabulous shows that I'm like, I wish we had things like that.
I know, I
you
know.
know, you don't get creepy show. I mean, I think what we do in the shadows is like one of the first like funny creepy things we've had. We've had like American Horror Story and like shows about horror, but
Yeah,
like for things like that, we don't get
yeah.
things like that anymore, really.
No, no. And it's funny because uh, Barnabas doesn't the character. I think a lot of people too don't realize what an extremely important part of vampire history Barnabas
Mm,
was. Like, I mean, you had Dracula, and Dracula was sort of the established way we looked at vampires.
yeah,
But with Dark Shadows, this was the first time you really saw, because they had to. I mean, Barnabas became. They were going to kill. They were going to stake Barnabas. Like, I mean, he was going to be on it for I think 6 weeks, and then he was going to get staked. No, maybe it was longer than that. Maybe it was 12 weeks. But then they realized, oh, we have like a star here. Like he
yeah.
his
You knew their
character.
bread was buttered when they first, I mean, when he
Yeah,
enters, it's like
yeah. And
he came in
Frid,
the room. Yeah, I mean, when he came in, I remember the first episode that he was actually where you saw him, and it was like
yeah,
he changed he changed the whole mood of the show.
yeah,
Like,
because he's a Shakespearean actor. He was a
yep,
trained Shakespearean actor.
yeah.
Like he added this sort of quality to the proceedings, right?
Yep. Just like, I mean, he's put in the same category with Bella and with
Yeah,
Christopher Lee, and
yeah,
because he has that same that you need that to play a vampire, a good like a classic vampire. There's
yes.
different vampires, obviously, but I mean, like for that classic trope of a vampire, I think you need that kind of actor and that
That
somebody that
aristocratic,
you
like
can't take your eyes off of. They're just
yes,
mesmerized by.
telling gravitas to them. Yeah, and he was a Shakespearean trained actor, and then he was went to Yale Drama School too, and he was actually not even he was going to go into teaching theater. He was going to become
Mm,
a college professor, and he got a call from his agent just as like he walked in the door. He came in from a tour. He was doing some show with Ray Milland, and he walked in the door and he dropped his bags and the phone rang. And if he hadn't answered the phone, or if he had walked in 10 minutes later, he wouldn't have gotten the call. The agent said, "Oh, they're auditioning for this part." He's like, "Oh, what is it?" He didn't even really want to. He's like, "Oh, it's a vampire." So he's like, "All right." So he tried out. Of course, he got the part. And what they did with him, and I think this was, Jonathan Frid and the writers and Dan Curtis kind of, they realized like to sustain this character long term, like he can't just kill everybody like in the show. So they started to incorporate elements of tragedy to the
yeah,
character. And that's the first time you really start to see this more and more of this side of the character where there's a you get hints that he hates being a vampire.
yeah.
He
The
says, "I
human side. Yeah.
yeah."
Oh,
It started
yeah.
to show some of that, and then I mean, I think it's for the first time ever. I think in Varney the Vampire, the Penny Dreadful series in the 19th century, they did do a little bit of this, but Dark Shadows really did the whole let's do the backstory of how
Yeah.
he became a vampire, which I don't want to spoil because you haven't gotten to yet, but that's the 1795
Yeah.
storyline where you find out what happened to Barnabas. And they've never, that this was like charting new territory. Like, wait, you find out how he became a vamp. You
The
see
path.
what the
Yeah.
path that led to what
Yeah.
monster you saw, and because Barnabas was horrible,
Horrible. Oh, and
horrible
Maggie?
thing.
Oh my
Oh,
God.
poor Maggie,
The
geez.
Maggie storyline is just, I mean, I felt so bad for her. My heart broke for her because it
Oh,
was just,
yeah,
oh, and every time they get close to her, of course, because it's like a soap opera, it's like you're waiting forever. You're like,
yeah,
oh my God, and it was
yeah,
just,
and
I mean, it's heartbreaking. It's very sad.
yeah.
And he's ruthless and
Oh, yeah.
cruel and
But he's obsessed with Josette. Like he wants to
yeah,
recreate Josette. So there's a
yeah,
romanticism to it, and it's like the Mummy that they took. I
hmm
mean, they took the Dracula and they combined it with the Karloff's Mummy
yeah,
story. Like they took those two ideas and combined them because
hmm
she looks like Josette, and
yeah,
he wants to bring back Josette, and she's like,
yeah,
you know, that's he sees Josette in her, but the things he does are monstrous,
yeah.
and so it's a very chic. And he went with Richard III as he loved. That was his favorite role ever was Richard III. So
Of
he
course.
incorporated a lot of Richard III into Barnabas. Like
I think all Shakespearean actors, when they're young, their favorite one is Richard III, and when they get old, it's Lear.
here,
Like
yeah,
every single one,
yeah,
like
yeah,
they
yeah,
all want to play Richard III when they're like in their 30s and 40s, and when they
yeah,
get older, they want to play Lear. Like
yeah,
that's
yeah.
kind of the or
True.
Hamlet. It's Hamlet
Or
as
him.
well.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
never hear people wanting to play Macbeth, which I'm like, Macbeth's a freaking
That's
awesome
awesome. I
character.
would love
Yeah.
to play Lady Macbeth. Oh my god, that's one of my like bucket list
Yes.
roles is Lady Macbeth. I would
You would
love.
make a fabulous Lady
Oh my
Macbeth.
god,
Oh
you
my
would too.
God.
You would too.
We'd be
That
wicked and cruel and
would
evil.
I would
Love
love
it.
to play Lady Macbeth.
Oh,
The red washing my hands blood.
yeah.
But
Out
yeah,
damn spot.
but yeah, and then it's interesting. Like the whole now when you see shows like True Blood
Mm,
and movies like Bram Stoker's Dracula, the Francis Ford Coppola film,
yeah.
all of that is because of Barnabas. Like
Yeah.
there was never that sympathetic,
Love
like
story.
love story,
Yeah.
and there's a thread of humanity. Lugosi hinted at it. He said to be dead, that would be truly uh, glorious. You know, like
Yeah.
there's a hint of it with Lugosi, but you really get to see the whole shebang with
Yeah.
Barnabas, which I thought was really interesting. And that's what made that such a
Yeah.
compelling show. People kept coming back to see what would happen next.
I mean, that's I think how vampires became such a romantic character. I
Yeah,
mean, think of how incredibly, think of all the ones now, like that kind of idea. You know, I didn't find Bella to be romantic. I found him to have that kind of scary. But you're right, like that. When I watched the show, I felt bad for him when they started reflecting on everything, and it was like they humanize them.
mm-hmm.
They're not this mythic figure anymore. They're actually a person
Yeah.
who they were a person at one point. They had feelings, they had thoughts, they had love, they had all these, these ideas that aren't really there anymore, and that's magical. I
But
love that
there's still,
that was the first time that happened. It makes
you know,
perfect sense.
but there's the struggle too with the monster
Yeah.
inside of them, where they
Yeah.
have to kill, they have to drink blood. Like
Yeah.
there can be completely without conscience. Like there's that struggle. And Anne Rice was a
Mm.
Dark Shadows fan, and
Oh,
Louis and like especially, I mean,
Lestat
certainly,
and Louis.
yeah. I
Like,
mean,
yeah.
Louis, I think in particular was even one of her storyline. The whole Interview with the Vampire, the idea of Interview with the Vampire was a Dark Shadows storyline. There is a storyline that's way down the road, which I'm not going to spoil, but
Okay. They
which
interview Barnabas.
I'm not going to
Okay,
spoil.
all right.
There,
Oh my God, you're kidding.
Dark Shadows goes crazy. Like I think Stephen
Yeah.
King, John Macabre described Dark Shadows as
Yeah.
a Mad Hatter's Tea Party because it would tune in
Yeah.
at tea time, and it was just insanity on your TV, like
Yeah.
live to tape flubs came boom mic dropping into the shot, but they're having like, you know, uh, they introduced this concept later in the series of parallel time. Like
Mm.
there's this supernatural room in Collinwood where if you open the door at the right time, it opens a portal to a different band of time. So there is a parallel time band that exists, and Barnabas goes into that time because he thinks that he can escape being a vampire. Like he said, maybe in this time band I won't be a vampire, and then
Oh my
the
God.
Willie of that time band, instead of releasing Barnabas from the coffin, traps Barnabas in the coffin, and the Willie in that time band is a writer. He's an author, and so he comes up with this insane idea that he's going to trap. He has a cross like affixed inside the coffin. He locks Barnabas in the coffin, and then he's going to interview him and write a book about his Barnabas's life. And
You are kidding me.
no,
Oh
no,
my
this,
God.
and it's like holy shit. This is kind of like, and people have talked about this before. I'm like Anne Rice, and she said she's a Dark Shadows, and I'm like she must have gotten that idea
Anne
from.
Rice, you little witch. Oh my God.
I'm sure that's where she got the idea. You know.
Yeah.
So
That's
yeah,
crazy.
I mean, like I said, Dark Shadows goes even more. Every
I can't wait.
storyline is like, what what are they doing? Like, it's like, but yeah, that's what you have to look forward to. That's
I'm
way
so
down the
excited.
road, though. That's
Yeah.
years from where you are.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so excited to see it. I can't wait. Oh my God. All right. So that's kind of our last vampire, but I wanted to reflect. So besides Barnabas, because I know how you feel about him, do you have a favorite of the ones we've talked about tonight?
Outside of Barnabas, like
Yeah, outside of Barnabas, because I know how much you love Barnabas, but because
well,
we'll put him on a different tier because he is
okay.
on a different
Well,
tier.
I mean, it's a Dark Shadows is probably like my favorite thing ever.
Yeah,
Like my
just
personality was forged by Dark Shadows
oh
somehow. I
yeah.
feel like,
Well, when
um,
I think I told
I
you this,
love Ant-Man too.
I have to share this because I know people that know you and some that know you from the show like will watch. When I watched it, and I've known you for so many years now, I saw you completely in it. Like I was like, it made me feel like I was hanging out with you, which is the best. It really
Oh,
did because I said that to Bill. Like I came home and I would say to him, I'm like, this show is so Dani. Like it's so like I can feel her in it, like her personality and her like I can see
but
why she loves it.
it's
Hmm?
what got me into theater, or fascinated by acting
Yeah.
and creating a character, and that sort of larger than life. And I got interested in performance through Dark because it felt like theater. Like I don't know, there was
Yeah, it
something
is
about
theater. It's just
Yeah,
recorded theater. It
yeah,
really, I mean, the fact that they keep all the flubs, the fact that they, I mean,
yeah.
that just, it just, it gives that live feeling, which I think it's great that they left that. And I know that you said Jonathan Frid hated that they left in like the flubs and stuff, but
Yeah,
like I think it's fabulous because you feel like you're watching a play.
yeah.
You feel like you're watching something that like really existed and it's not
Oh,
something that was
totally.
actually put together
And they
for you.
hired all these like New York theater actors
Hmm.
and brought in a movie star like Joan Bennett. It's just,
Yeah.
but out of, geez, I can't, it's such a tough call between Christopher Lee and Bela Lugosi.
Yeah.
Like that's like picking your favorite, child, or favorite M&M. Like what do you like better, the red M&M or the green M? They both
No,
taste the same,
I
really,
know.
just the colors. Um, do I like Lugosi or Lee better?
You don't have to pick. This is
I
not like a
can't.
Sophie's choice. Like this
I
is
genuinely can't pick
Yeah.
between. It has to be either Bela Lugosi or Christopher Lee,
Yep.
but I can't pick. It, can't. I can't.
That's
I
okay.
really can't. I'm
You don't
sorry.
have to. It was not like I said, it's not a Sophie's
Such a
choice.
difficult. That's
I
such. I wish
know.
I could. I can't pick. If you ask me
I
who my,
can't either. I don't have a favorite.
if you
I
ask
don't
me who
have
my
a
favorite Frankenstein was, I would say Boris Karloff.
Boris Karloff. Yeah,
If you ask me who my
absolutely.
favorite werewolf was, I would say Cheney Jr.
Yeah.
I still Lon Chaney Jr.
Yeah.
Um, as the Wolf Man. Although I do
Hmm.
love me some Paul. Paul Nash is like very close.
Yeah. But Lunchady, like, yeah, I mean, that's, I couldn't pick. If I was thinking about it, I'm like, can I pick? And I'm like, no, no, I can't really pick. No.
No,
I
no.
mean, like, we could talk about the whole other, like, modern vampire films. Like you mentioned, Interview with the Vampire. And,
Mhm.
we could talk about Fright Night, which is one of my
Oh, Fright Night.
favorites.
I love Fright
I
Night.
adore Fright Night.
Yeah,
I could do a whole episode on Fright Night because it's just one of
yeah.
my faves. I think Chris Sarandon is one of the sexiest vampires that ever was.
Yeah.
Thank you, Barnabas, for making that humanized. Because that's totally the same story. He's like in love with the girl. He sees the girl
Yeah,
and she's the
yeah.
the wife, and it's such a great film. I love Tom Holland and I love that movie, and of course Roddy McDowall is the
Oh,
horror
so
host
good.
Van
So
Helsing
good.
character.
I
He's
love Peter Vincent. Yeah.
Peter Vincent, named after Peter
Yeah,
Cushing and Vincent Price. Like
yeah,
it's
yeah,
just a fabulous film, and I mean that's one of my favorites. Of course I love The Lost Boys.
yeah.
I have like all these favorites, that I grew up around. I mean, Kiefer Sutherland was one of my first crushes. He was like one of the very first crushes, and I was madly in love with David. I thought,
Yeah.
I want to go run and be a vampire in California with him because that looks like a good life. Right on the back of his
Party all
bike.
night, live forever.
Yep. I'm like, I'll
I
do
love,
that. Give me
yeah,
the blood. Give me the
yeah.
blood. I'll drink it. Just
I
come
loved
on.
all those movies.
They're
Yeah,
fabulous. I mean, and we owe, as you were saying that about Barnabas, I was like, oh my God, we owe so many things to that. Like, because that's
yeah.
basically the story now. That's kind of the vampire story is that they're in love and
The
they're,
lost love, that she
yeah,
resembles. I mean, technically, yeah, it did come from the Mummy, but the first time it was applied to vampires. The
mm-hmm,
vampire was Dark Shadows, and then that
yeah,
became like a trope in vampire movies
absolutely.
subsequent to
Mm-hmm.
that. Even to in the Francis Ford Coppola, Gary Oldman, which I have mixed feelings about. Like I like Gary Oldman. Gary Oldman can do no wrong. He's always good, but
Yeah,
there were things in that movie that I was just like, I don't know why they made some of
yeah.
those choices, but.
Mm-hmm. I always love, I mean, that one I'm not, I feel the same way about. I'm not like in love with it. I don't hate it. It's pretty. It's a very pretty
Yeah,
film. I mean, it's
yeah,
beautiful, beautifully shot,
yeah.
beautifully acted, really
Mhm.
well done. But I
But it's
don't always,
yeah,
I don't like it like I do other. I like it. It just kind of felt like it was recreating a little bit and unnecessarily recreating. As much as I love Gary Oldman too, I do, and I think he made a great vampire because he makes a great everything.
yeah.
Um, I think that they kind of, and this sounds like blasphemy a little bit, but it sometimes reminds me a little bit of the Gus Van Sant Psycho, like when he
Oh,
when he
okay.
reshot Psycho,
Yeah.
shot for shot, and I
Shot
kind
for
of
shot.
feel like
The
it's like,
pointless Psycho remake. Yeah.
yeah, I kind of feel not that he completely did that with that one because it's different, but it's got that same kind of feeling to it. It's got that same kind of like
Yeah.
I'm just trying to remake something I really love, and I find that unnecessary and kind of elitist and full of yourself if you try to
Yeah.
like just remake something. You know what I mean? Like you can do a
Yeah.
different take on it because you were
Right.
inspired by it or whatever it is, but I think people that remake films just because and he did a little bit different. The makeup was different, the look was different. He
Sure.
turns into all kinds of different forms
Yeah.
during it. My
He
favorite
still should
being
have called it Bram Stoker's Dracula because it wasn't. It's not.
no.
It's not like the novel. Like they changed a lot of things. Like the
Yeah,
love story
the
was
love
not.
story.
That's
Yeah,
not there. Like
yeah.
it's a lot. And the Count Chocula hair with the big white hair with the
I love.
like what the
You know what I
what?
think of?
What is that? What
I,
did you get their hairdo done? Like
oh, you will love this. I don't know if you've ever seen the episode, but they made fun of that on The
from The
Simpsons.
Simpsons, yeah, with
Yeah,
Mr. Burns
when
has it.
Mr. Burns has the hair,
Yeah.
and they all go, he's like, Dad, he said, yeah, I can't remember. Kate's gonna kill me because the moment's getting away from me. But he said, like, he goes, Dad, what do you think? He goes, I know his hairdo is so queer. And Mr. Burns like, I heard that, and they're like, because it was just like,
It's like,
oh,
was this choice made? I
I
don't get.
know.
And
I
I
always love in the movie when he goes with the
yeah.
scalpel. It's just like, oh, Gary Oldman's such a creep. I love him so
Oh,
much.
he was great.
He's another actor that's like transforms himself. You don't even
Oh,
recognize
yeah,
him in
totally.
anything. Yeah, but yeah, I am just like it. I think it's kind of unnecessary on some levels. Whenever I've watched it, I'm like, this movie's so over itself, constant. Like it's just
Ah,
so over the top every single time I've watched it.
over the top, yeah.
Yeah, but not in all the great ways. Oh, all right. So, I mean, I think that's it for our vampires.
Awesome.
I think
Well,
we
thank
talked
you
about all our
for having
old
me
school.
on, Erin.
You're welcome.
It's
Thank you for
always a
being
pleasure to
here.
see you.
It's a pleasure to see you. I love talking horror movies with you. You know that. It's like,
Yes, likewise, likewise.
I know. They always, it just sounds like us talking every single time. um, okay, well, we're gonna say goodbye to the podcast people, but I'll keep you on. How does that sound? So, goodbye, everybody.
Hi.
Thank you for listening to us. And
Loving my bat tattoo on the screen.
oh, yeah, your great bat noises. All right, stay spooky, everybody.